Those of you who followed my Ascendant Project series know that I'm in the middle right now of an aquaponics project. And so, as of late, I've been thinking a lot about food and growing food. And just coincidentally, I happened to watch this documentary last night that really got my mind going. The documentary is about an archaeological site in Canada. And it was a site during the 1500s of a group of people whose descendants are now part of what is called the Huron Nation of First Peoples, Native Americans. And this particular site is notable because it was huge. It was called Mantle. And for the people, it was giant. Basically, it was like 100 of these long buildings called longhouses that housed about 2,000 people at its peak, they think. They've excavated a lot of this, and they've figured out that, and this was what blew me away, the amount of farmland. These people ate about a diet that was about 65% corn, and so they said, how much corn would it take to feed as 60% of a diet using normal caloric intake, knowing the corn that they had and knowing the farming methodology that they used at the time, because the Europeans were maybe 100 years later that they made contact. So they kind of know a lot about these people and the technology that they had. So they were trying to figure out, like, how much corn would you have to grow? Like, what would the cornfields look like? It turns out that it was about 30 square miles of corn. So now basically what that looks like is a circle that went out so if you're standing in the middle of town, in every single direction, it went 5 miles. A 5-mile radius of nothing but cornfields. Right? So imagine you walk a mile. And if you've ever been in a cornfield, you know how easy it is to get lost. You walk a mile in, it's corn. You walk 2 miles in, corn. 3, 4, 5 miles in, corn. In a huge circle all the way around this place, right? Then they said to clothe the people and to also sort of supplement their diet, it would have taken like 7,000 deer. And in order to get 7,000 deer out of that area, they would have had to have a hunting ground that went out in every direction in a circle, 25 miles in any one direction. So imagine that. It's over 600 square miles, which for me is a number that makes a lot of sense. I live in Las Vegas. I'm actually recording this at the art gallery that I own, sort of in the center of the Las Vegas Valley, which is the population center of southern Nevada, pretty much the only population. It's ringed by mountains, and it's almost the same. It's about 600 square miles. So I'm just imagining that these 2,000 people, like dead in the middle, there's probably 2,000 people within a 1-mile radius of me right now, for sure, because there's just right up the street, there's a huge strip casino. So I know there's 2,000 people on that casino floor right now, probably. But I'm just imagining, for those 2,000 people, in 25 miles in any direction, they had to be the only people there. This got me thinking. Aquaponics, and my first milestone for this project, I think it's really revolutionary, is to, for 30 days, only eat food that I've grown. Aquaponics is fish and basically hydroponic vegetables. So to only eat food that I've grown for 30 days. And with a well-designed and fully operational aquaponics system, you could do that in a month. You'd wear down the aquaponics system, but you could do that in a month in like under 40 square feet for one person for 1 month. So with these people, it's like 10 acres is about 20,000 acres worth of corn. 10 acres of corn per person that they had to have to sustain this 2,000 people. So I was like, well, what is it now? Like, what is it with modern farming? And if you were to do it yourself, from what I've looked, and if you're a pretty good farmer and you know what you're doing with soil-based farming, they say it's about 1 acre. If you're doing a vegetarian diet, maybe supplemented with like some chickens or something, they say it's like 1 acre per person will you can feed yourself permanently for a year. That's if you have 4 growing seasons, or 1 acre. They say if you're hunting and gathering, like if shit hits the fan and you're taking a rifle, it's like 10 square miles per person. So think about what we've done. I mean, from 10 acres to 1 acre. Through farming, we've made everything 10 times more abundant, right? In our farming methods. And then when you add in things like GMOs, which I'll talk a little bit about, my thoughts on that, probably in another video. I'm not really for or against. I know that's going to piss a lot of people off. They're not the most effective way and to grow lots of food. But for the system that we have, I mean, they're making people money. But when you add that in, sort of really resource intensive methodology of farming, you know, we've gotten it down quite a bit. And you would think, you know, you look back at that time, 2,000 people, 25 miles in any direction. And you figure this is just to sustain them. That's not to say they probably needed more, because what if things went wrong? This is like in a prime situation. This is like the minimum they need. So let's say you're another Indian tribe, or let's say you're European settlers, and you get within that 25-mile radius, and a hunting party comes upon you. They are going to have to kill you. They're going to have to get you out of those hunting grounds. Because if you start taking up that space, at least some portion of them is going to starve. You've made resources scarce. But technology makes it more abundant. And more abundance makes it so that bubble shrinks, right? This is the war bubble. Anybody inside this bubble, we have to make war on them, because they are an existential threat. Abundance shrinks the bubble. Thus the title of the video. No abundance, no peace. KNOW. Right? Because the more scarce things are, the more competitive we have to get for resources. And all wars, right? All wars are about resources, scarce resources. And what that shows us, that move, that technology increase, it shows us that abundance and scarcity, the other side of it, it's completely relative. It's not objective. There's not some set land footprint that it takes to feed a human being. That's person, place, and time. It's all subjective. You know, it's determined by your geography. Are you in a place that's got 4 growing seasons, or a place that's got only 2? If you have only 2, you need more area. But it's determined by time. Because 500 years before wherever you are right now, you needed more space because the tools that you had, both intellectual and physical, were not as efficient as the ones you have today. And 500 years from now, they're going to be even more efficient, hopefully. Hopefully, if things are allowed to move forward. Which brings me to my thought. And this thought is about the state. Now, you could make arguments, and anarchists make arguments all the time, and it's completely true, and it's the reason why I'm an anarchist, that the state is inherently violent. But there are those who would argue that the state, maybe through voting, You could just vote harder, and that the state could be made peaceful. It could be reined in. But here's the problem. There is a correlation between abundance and peace. If things are abundant, the more abundant they are, the more peaceful a human being is allowed to be. And abundance is up here. And the state is an engine of scarcity. This is something nobody talks about, or at least I haven't heard. But abundance and scarcity is a big deal to me. I mean, it's understanding that and understanding value is part of, what has made me successful as a gigolo. And it's something that I've written about extensively when it comes to romantic relationships, abundance and scarcity, and how altering or controlling that perception is what it's really all about. The state, by default, is an engine of scarcity. Now, any business owner knows this, right? Business licenses, zoning. If you're talking about any kind of central or urban planning, right, it's all about creating barriers to entry for people doing things. Most recently, we had this massive explosion of just regular civilians building and utilizing drones in all kinds of new and cool ways. The FAA stepped in, made drone regulations, made it basically enforced scarcity. That the number, there was no longer an abundant opportunity to work with drones. How many people fell off? And how many of those people that fell off because they couldn't afford the FAA license, or it was too much work to go through, or they were just plain scared, decided that, I'm just not going to fuck with drones? I have a recent example myself with the aquaponics. The fish that I've decided to grow is the one that most people grow with aquaponics, which is tilapia. It's a fish you can go and buy in the grocery store. Organic tilapia, pretty expensive. I was just at Whole Foods yesterday, $11 a pound, right? And your average fish, you maybe get a third of a pound. So 3 fish, fillets, $11. And they magnify and they grow. They are so prolific of breeders that in many states, they're actually outlawed and considered a pest, because if they get into the waterways, they just basically go through and just breed the other fish out. Nevada is one of those states. As I was going through and looking at aquaponics things about Nevada, I'm trying to understand if there were any regulations, things that would prevent me, I kept running across people saying, I'm in Nevada, I want to do aquaponics, but tilapia are illegal. What other fish can I use? Tilapia are illegal. And the thing is, they're just the best fish for aquaponics, especially in the desert. They like their water very warm. They're the perfect fish for the desert, and in fact, most of the aquaculture that's done of tilapia in the US is done in this exact desert that I'm in. So it's like perfect. So then I go and look, is this really the case? Yes, everybody's like, illegal, illegal, illegal. Finally found one guy who was like, okay, it's not really illegal, but you got to go to the wildlife, whatever, the Wildlife Regulatory Board, whatever it's called here, and you've got to apply, and you got to describe your tank and everything, and it's a $500 licensing fee. I go and look. It took me about 2 hours going through, and I'm good at this. As a business owner in Nevada, I've had to go through a lot of regulations. I'm going through stuff with the city of Las Vegas right now on this particular building, so I'm good at this. I'm going through regulations, I'm going down, finally find it. It's actually not even $500. It's a $15 license to grow them for your own food. But think about how many people who might have otherwise, maybe even myself, who's really dedicated to doing this project, but think how I could have been dissuaded. Had I known it was $15, no. But this is the state. on a real life, simple level. It's not some abstract talking about the war machine and the federal government and the Federal Reserve. No, go to the DMV. You want to understand how scarcity impedes peace? Go to the DMV. I don't know when the last time you went. I have to go pretty soon. Probably got to go tomorrow for registration of my car. But I know in California and in Nevada, I don't know in your state, probably like this, you walk in, you take a number. And up on the screen, there are some numbers. Maybe 10, 15. Now serving G32. Now serving H73. And you might be like H220. Right? The windows are scarce. Therefore, you have to wait. Do you see a lot of happy, smiling people at the DMV? Or do you see a lot of people on the verge, really, of violent outbursts? God forbid they have to take their kids there with them. Right? This is the overall general attitude that the state creates. And the thing is, could the state create abundance? In that exact scenario? Are there solutions to the DMV problem? It's not like people don't know that the DMV is an issue and that the DMV weights are an issue. Could these things be alleviated? Is there a solution to them? Yes. But government can't do it. They'd have to hire an outside contractor. There would have to be a bid. There's a scarcity of people who could actually provide it because they have to be approved by the government. Scarcity, scarcity, scarcity. So, as you look at trying to create a more peaceful world, you have to take into consideration that you can't have peace until you have abundance. It's abundance first. Finding the solutions that create abundance, however they come, even if they are against the law, even if it is a gray market, those are the revolutionary acts. First, abundance for yourself. And then the knowledge and the wisdom to share with others so that they can have abundance. That's the place that we're at.